Welcome to the Raven's Call. I'm Eric Wordweaver Sherman, Gothi of the Ridgar folk here in East Texas. This video is going to serve as a general primer into the world of heathenry. A heathenry 101, if you will. Now, anytime someone tries to put together a 101 video, an introductory type video into the world of heathenry, the one thing that I always notice is that you simply cannot put the entirety of a worldview and culture, religious outlook into a single video. You cannot cover everything there is to cover. And heathenry as a folkway, as a worldview, as a religion, begins to get so complex that you cannot seem to put everything into one bite-sized video. So, I'm not going to attempt that today. What I'm going to do is simply give you an introduction. This is a sneak peek into the world of heathenry. There's a saying in heathenry that heathenry is the religion with homework. I have to say that I agree with this. There's a great deal of reading and research that needs to be done for a person to truly understand the worldview of heathenry and what heathenry is about. Now, there is a possibility that you're watching this video because a loved one has shared it with you with the intent of teaching you a little bit about what they do as a religion and as a folkway, their culture. I encourage you, please watch the video through, get to know us a little bit, and you will see what heathenry is all about. One of the first things that I'd like to discuss with you is a little bit about what heathenry itself is, all right? Now, we'll get into the meaning of the term heathen here in just a moment, but heathenry itself is the folkway, religion, traditions, culture of Northern Europe before the area was Christianized, before Christianity made its way up into Northern Europe and everyone was converted over. Now that was not entirely a peaceable process. Some areas were, a lot of areas weren't. You can look to stories regarding Olaf Tryggvason, Olaf Haraldsson, Charlemagne, the Anglo-Saxons, and you can see that the conversion from heathenry to Christianity was tempestuous, to say the least. There was a lot of conversion by sword and by fire. So heathenry is everything that takes place prior to that point. All right? Now, in layman's terms, heathenry is the belief in the old ways, the belief in the old gods. Heathenry today is the modern attempt to try and bring back those traditions and that way of thinking, that culture, bringing it into the modern age. Now, a little bit in the history aspect of things, heathenry existed prior to the Christianization of Northern Europe. This was also before a great number of things were written down. This was still during a period where everything was passed down orally. Hence my fascination with storytellers and the role that they play within a society. But this was prior to the invention of, or the advent of writing, really. So there's not a great deal of information that's available to us about this time period. We know that it spans centuries, and the best that we can gather from the very, very early days, this is, prior to the Viking period, Bronze Age, this is on into earlier stuff, Proto-Indo-European roots, which is just a fancy way of saying the old stuff before the groups that we recognize came around. It spanned centuries. It spanned all of Northern Europe. And so heathenry itself existed unbroken for a long time. Then Christianity comes to the north. When Christianity comes into the north, legally, Christianity is taken as the main religion for the area, and heathenry is outlawed in a number of areas. It's pushed out, and heathenry kind of goes dormant for a while. If you look through some of the Icelandic sagas, you'll see that around the year 1000, they converted over to Christianity, and legally, officially made it such that Christianity was the religion of all men in Iceland, that practice of heathenry could be punishable by the full extent of the law, and unless it was done in secret. You just weren't allowed to do it out in the open. One of the things that we see during the conversion period is that people did not necessarily let go of their traditions, to let go of their way of doing things, their ongoing cultural influence. And so Christianity and heathenry meshed and created a sort of amalgamated thing that gave birth to a number of the traditions, a lot of the folklore that comes out of Northern Europe, especially during the medieval and later periods, influenced by heathen backgrounds and Christian influence. So a great deal of what we see during that time period is a mix of the two. And then we come to modern day, where a number of individuals hear the call of the old gods. We come to the realization that we need something that's true to our souls. And this is how people find their way home to heathenry. Heathenry never died out. Heathenry was still practiced in small pockets, but mostly through folk traditions and beliefs. It wasn't always called heathenry, honestly. If you look at the lore, if you look into some of the contemporary authors, things like that, you will find that back in the day, back closer to Archean times, keeping in mind that there's not a lot of writing from heathen times itself. And back towards Archean times, they even used the term heathen. That's where the term heathen comes from. Now, heathen, in and of itself, is literally heath and en suffix being usually the folk of, at least in a Scandinavian context, heath, the folk of the heath. Now that is from that version of it. The actual word found in the older sources was actually heathen, which was spelled a little bit differently, utilizing the alphabet at the time and the language patterns at the time. But essentially, this term was birthed during the conversion period. Heathenry was used to refer to those people that still held on to the old ways, because prior to Christianity coming through, the old ways were all we knew. That was all our people knew. And as such, they didn't really need a name for it. Names exist because we need to differentiate one thing from something else. You have two people next to each other, one of them needs to be Eric and one of them needs to be Bob, otherwise how are you going to know who you're referring to? If you were the only person in the world, no one else to deal with, you wouldn't need a name, everything would simply be you. This was the case of heathenry back in the arch-heathen times. There wasn't a need for a name. So we didn't pass a name down, it's simply what everyone believed. During the Christianization, they spawned the term heathen. Ostensibly, it's people of the heath, country bumpkin, similar to the root of pagan, which is another term used for non-Christian believers. Typically, pagan, though, is used more in a pan-Celtic sense, whereas heathen is more used for Germanic paganism, Germanic heathenry. So, the term heathen itself isn't a new invention, but it's also not the only name which heathenry is known by. Heathenry also went by a number of other names. One of those names is Asatru. Asatru is a new term. This is not an old term. This term came along in recent years and refers more to the Icelandic approach of heathenry. There's a group in Iceland, the official recognized religious organization of Asatruarfélagið, which basically means the Asatru Fellowship. And Asatru in its base terms is intended to mean Asa, true or faithful to the Asa, or the Aesir, which is the race of our gods. Now, you'll also hear it referred to as Odinism. This I find more common in the UK, as well as amongst the less desirable individuals. Just because they call themselves Odinists does not mean they fall into the less desirable categories. It simply could be that they have a little bit more of a UK background, or this is just simply the only term that they've ever come across to explain heathenry. Now, there's also an Anglo-Saxon bent, which tends to be in the realm of Theodish belief. Theodish roughly translating to the folk or the people. This is a name that is given to a particular approach that focuses mostly on Anglo-Saxon heathenry, more mainland Europe before the Viking Age, and it has a lot of influences in Old English, areas like that. So there are other names by which heathenry is known. You'll know a lot of people that will call themselves Norse pagan, who will call themselves Norse shaman. These are all different names that lead towards the same root of heathenry. I tend to use the term heathenry because it's an all-encompassing term that refers generally to Germanic paganism. And this is why I like to use the term heathenry. It encompasses Northern Europe during the pre-Christian era, and it covers a large span of time, a large, broad area. Now, as you'll talk to other individuals, as you get to know people, you'll find that people will focus on specific time periods, specific areas, especially if they fall into the hardcore Reconstructionist area of things. That's a whole other conversation. Don't worry about it today. Some others will be more what I call pan-Germanic, encompassing a lot of areas, kind of bringing it all into one. Now, I myself fall into the Norse Icelandic side of things, so that's going to color a great deal of the lesson today. That being said, I will try to include some things from the different areas, but it should tell you very early on that if you have a specific area of interest, such as Anglo-Saxon heathenry, Norse Icelandic, Germanic, Russian, Finnish, whatever, you will need to seek out specific information on these, as this primer will only get you started and hopefully point you in the right direction. Word of note, if you're interested in Finnish heathenry, they have a completely different thing, a completely different language base, so get ready, you're in for a long haul. So, onwards. Now that we've discussed a little bit about the history of heathenry, let's talk some about the belief structure. Now, I'd like to preface this with the understanding that throughout ancient heathen times, as well as in modern times, no two tribes have ever believed exactly the same way, seen heathenry exactly the same way. And as such, they have differing points of view, differing approaches to heathenry, and may even see things such as the gods and goddesses in different lights. They may even worship different gods and goddesses, still be part of heathenry as a whole. But for example, just to give you a show, the character of Loki, the god Loki, is present in the Scandinavian texts, but he is not present at all in the Anglo-Saxon texts. And then he appears in some elements in the Germanic texts. So you'll find that different areas worshipped in different ways, and that still remains true today. Different tribes will practice different ways. So do not take this to be representative of all of heathenry. This is simply how I see heathenry, and use it as a jumping off point to find your own understanding. Now, all of that being said, I see heathenry as a folkway, religion, culture of relationships. There is a series of relationships that we all focus on and try to maintain in our lives so that we can have good, happy, whole lives. And the one thing you'll notice in all of this is that as I go through, you will find that heathenry is not just one thing. This is why a video of this nature is not easy, is because heathenry is not simple. Heathenry is not just one thing. Heathenry is not just a religion. It's not just a folkway. It's not just traditions. It is an entire culture and everything that's incorporated in it. And even then, it's a series of cultures and is complicated. So, the four relationships. Heathenry is what is referred to as a polytheistic religion. This is belief in multiple gods and goddesses within the same pantheon. You've run into this with the ancient Greeks, the ancient Romans, the ancient Egyptians, the Hindus. Polytheism has existed in some way, shape, form, or fashion in every area of the world at some point in time in their lives. So being polytheistic, heathens believe in a number of different gods and goddesses. I can go into a great deal of detail onto the gods and goddesses and the different members of the tribes of the gods, but that's for another video. In short, you need to know that the gods and goddesses that we worship, you are familiar with. You've heard their names. You see them in modern pop culture, in comics, and all sorts of things. But they predate all of that. The names of our gods are names that you know. These are Odin, Thor, Balder, Tyr. Now, some of these you may not realize you know. But even in the days of the week, you have Monday, or Mandag, which is Mani's day, the moon. You have Tirsdag, or Tuesday, which comes from the root of Tyr, one of our gods. Wednesday, the most obvious of all, Wednesday is Woden's day, or Odin's day. In Norwegian, it's Onsdag, which is Odin's day. Now, Thursday is Thor's day. Friday is Freya's day, or Frigga's day. There's actually some debate as to whether or not Friday is Frigga or Freya. Anyway, you know the names of our gods. You've seen them. You've experienced them in some way, shape, form, or fashion. And this is one of the areas that we focus on. And here's why. In the beginning, the gods created the world. They took chaos and created order. They created the world that we know and gave us earth. They gave us science. They gave us the laws of the land. They set in motion everything that we experience today. And by doing so, they gave us the gift of life and the gift of the world. And we strive through building this relationship to try and pay back the debt that we have to them for that initial gift. There's a rule within heathenry, gift begets a gift. It's a gift for a gift. We believe very heavily in reciprocal giving and responsibility. And as such, a gift automatically gets a gift debt. When the gods gave us a gift such as grand as the world itself, we will spend the rest of eternity trying to pay that back. In trying to repay this gift debt that we have to the gods, we maintain this relationship with them. We give, and they bless us in return. This is the religious part of heathenry. This is the interaction with the gods and goddesses. You will actually find, especially if you study a lot of the reconstructed sources, a lot of the research done by modern heathens, and a lot of really good stuff coming out of the Theodish and hardcore recon areas. You will find a lot of interesting insight into how to access the gods and how to actively engage in the gift cycle with the gods. There'll be a number of videos on these kind of subjects later on. But for the time being, know that the first relationship that we focus on within heathenry is the gods and goddesses. The second relationship we will focus on within heathenry is that of the ancestors. This is everyone that came before us in our lines. This is grandfathers, great-grandfathers, 26th great-grandfathers and great-grandmothers and aunts and uncles. Anyone whose actions and bloodline, not just bloodline, but being part of a family, anybody whose actions and deeds directly lead to our being here today. The ancestors of our lines are our tribe members on the way, all the way back to the beginning. It is through the actions of everyone in our family tree, all the way back to the beginning, and the friends and family that make up their tribe, that we are even here today. If any one of them had made a simple decision differently back in the day, we might not be here today. Entire branches of the family might not be here today, simply because someone decided not to go on that date, or not to court that one individual, or to say no when this gentleman came a-calling. If they had gone to war at a different time, had died just a little earlier or a little later, everything could be different. So we owe everything that we are now today to our ancestors. At least we owe where we start our lives to our ancestors. We, of course, then build on it and make our decisions and try to make our ancestors proud in our actions as we go through life. We try to live lives in such a way that we will bring pride to our family names. We will bring pride to our tribes. And we try to continue to engage in a gifting cycle with the ancestors as well, so that the spirits of our ancestors, their souls, if you will, will continue to bless us with luck and good tidings, good things for the future. So, this is the second relationship, that of the ancestors. The third relationship is this funny looking word over here. This is the Vetir, also known as the spirits of the land. The rocks, the trees, the small animals, the living, breathing spirit of the land around us. This is a very complex subject to delve into. I'm not going to go into detail in it here, but know that heathens have a very complex understanding of the spirit of the world around us and how we interact with those spirits. Because just like we owe the gods for creating the world, we owe our ancestors for making the decisions and setting us on the path that we could begin and then walk ourselves. We owe to the Vetir a debt in that without the Vetir, without the spirits of the land, we would starve. Because if they withheld their bounty, if we could not hunt, if we could not fish, if we could not farm, if they withheld their bounty, we would be without and we would starve. So we build a relationship with the spirits of the land so that we can live together in harmony on Midgard, Earth, and be able to share this space. So, another major area. The last relationship that we're going to talk about today is that of the folk. Now, when I use the term folk, I'm specifically referring to one's people, the people that are around them. All right? Now, you will hear the term folk used in a number of different ways, in a number of different settings. The way I'm using it here specifically refers to one's tribe or kindred, one's inner yard. Again, those are deeper discussions for another day. But these are the people that you surround yourself with, your chosen family. These are the people that you will be practicing heathenry with. They're also your immediate family. They're everyone that is tied very, very closely to your inner circle. It's by necessity a small group, but then you also have a folk community that builds up around it. To the folk, we also owe survival. If you look in the olden days, it was impossible for one family to make it by themselves in the hard environments in which they lived. They needed to band together to be able to make it through. So the only way they could make it and survive is by depending on their folk, their people, the people that are around them. Folk is bound by oath, by blood, by proximity, shared interest. So even today, we focus heavily on the folk because we know that in this world, you cannot make it on your own. You need tribe, you need family. And so we build this and we do this. So this constitutes the fourth relationship that I see within heathenry. So we focus on our gods and our goddesses, our ancestors, the Vetir, and our people. We utilize our rituals to honor these and to build the relationships. And then from there we move on and we continue to try and include each of these in our lives every day and live good, strong lives. Now that we've discussed a little bit about the belief structure of heathenry, I'm going to delve very, very briefly into rituals. Now, there's a couple of main rituals that I want to focus on, and I'm only going to look at them in generality. This way you can kind of have a general idea and know what to look for when you're looking through introductory books and videos and when you talk to people. The first thing you need to know about is bloat or feigning. These are two different words that essentially mean the same thing. Bloat is an ancient word that means sacrifice, essentially. Feigning comes from an Anglo-Saxon root, which effectively means to celebrate or to honor, to venerate. So this is ritualized sacrifice, offering, more accurately. This is where we make offering to the gods and goddesses, we make an offering to our ancestors, or we make an offering to the Vetir of the land. Bloat specifically you will find is a term that tends to be used for interaction with the gods and goddesses, specifically as a sacrifice. We'll get into details on that in different videos. But bloat, or feigning, is for the divine. This is for the other. This is for interacting with the numinous, which is a fancy word to say the unseen powers, the gods and goddesses, our ancestors, and the Vetir of the land. Through bloat, We give offering to them. And in heathenry there is, like I said before, the belief that gift begets a gift. So we offer a sacrifice of an offering to the gods and goddesses, or any of those entities, with the hope that they will then turn around and bless us with luck in return. So this is bloat and feigning. Essentially, in short, the tribe will gather together. Frequently they will use a horn of mead or some other substance. We've used everything from breads to meats to all sorts of things. And we will offer it to the gods and goddesses and leave it out on our altar for the gods and goddesses then to take. Done the same with the Vetir, with our ancestors. And then we ask that they bless us with luck in return. Now, the other ritual that I'd like to discuss with you is that of Sumbul. You'll actually see Sumbul spelled a bunch of different ways. It all depends on the linguistic root that you come from. Regardless of spelling, Sumbul itself is ritualized toasting. Now, there are a couple of different versions of Sumbul. There's the one that has grown up in modern heathenry today, particularly throughout the Midwest and some of the other areas, which is structured in the vein of 3 rounds. You gather everyone together in a circle, you'll fill a horn full of mead, and then it will be passed around, or wine, or whatever is fitting, and passed around the circle. And it's a series of ritualized toasts where each person goes through and makes a toast to whatever the round is dedicated to. For instance, the first round is usually, in that paradigm, is dedicated to the gods and goddesses. So in the first round, everyone would make their toast to the gods or goddesses, or to a specific god or goddess. The second round is to the ancestors, the dearly departed, the fallen. The third round is for toasts, oaths, and boasts. This is a point where people can brag on their own good doings, their own achievements in life. They can also boast of the achievements of others, and ritualized oaths and gifts can be given. This is a modern rendition of Sumbul. It is not entirely historically accurate from what I've seen as far as what is represented within the literature. That's where you're going to find some differences. Particularly in Anglo-Saxon areas like Theodish belief, you'll find a different kind of attack on the Sumbul. What stands true across different cultures is that Sumbul seems to be oriented on ritualized drinking or toasts, and then culturally the rules about how that goes on will change. So these are 2 of the rituals that you will see. There are other minor rituals, but each of the smaller rituals differs from household to household. There's no one way to do heathenry. That's what I believe anyway. I don't believe that there is a one right way to do heathenry. I know some of the guys out there will tell you that, you know, there's one good way, especially amongst some of the hardcore recons. It's just not how I do it. So now in conclusion, we've talked about the belief structure, kind of what is heathenry, and some about our ritual structure. Heathenry itself is a culture when it all boils down to it in the end. Heathenry is about the people. Heathenry is about getting out and interacting with each other, holding festivals, having a grand time. You will find as you've watched this video that I've discussed a lot about heathenry, but you may not understand hardly anything. You can study all day long and it doesn't matter until you get out there and you actually interact, you actually deal with people directly. Heathenry takes place in person. Heathenry doesn't take place online. Heathenry doesn't take place in a book. Heathenry is about people getting together, worshiping our gods and goddesses, enjoying being together, honoring our ancestors together, honoring the Vetir, and having a grand time. This is just a basic primer on what heathenry is, maybe an explanation to some folks that might be interested in what it is that you do. For those of you that are watching for friends and relatives, I'm sure that your minds are blown and that if you've even finished watching this video at this point, you're like, what is he talking about? This is simply a starting point to get you out there to look at and talk to your individuals, your people, and find out what it is they believe. Ask them, show them the video and ask them, hey, where do you differ from this guy? This is where he explains it. Now you explain it to me. Where is he off base in the way that you see things? Because like I said, no 2 heathens are going to see things exactly the same way. Talk to your people, find out how they see heathenry. Find out what they do. And then you'll get a better picture. Hopefully this will just give you a little bit of a primer and a jumping off point. If you're new and you're seeking out heathenry, you've just discovered how complex heathenry really can be and how difficult it is to discuss in nice, concise little bite-sized bits. So I would encourage you to go out and read everything you can. Get your hands on as many sources as you can. Depending on when you're watching this particular video, there are sources on Facebook I know of, and there are sources on a couple of different websites. I'm not going to throw those in here right now because I don't know when you're going to be watching this, but get on and look up heathen lore. Look up the sagas, the Icelandic sagas. Read every Icelandic saga you can get your hands on. Read the Poetic Edda. Read the Prose Edda. Just understand that the Prose Edda was written by Snorri Sturluson after the Christianization of Northern Europe, so it's tainted heavily, but still, there's some good stuff in there because he got all of that from someplace. It had a starting point. So, read it, just take it kind of with a grain of salt, look to the stories and the underlying roots, and you will find a little bit more of the truth there. Get out there and talk to people, interact with people, talk to other heathens, talk to heathens that are in different areas than what you prefer. If you are a Norse heathen, talk to some Anglo-Saxon heathens, see how they do things. If you're Anglo-Saxon heathen, talk to some Norse Icelandic guys, talk to some of the Finnish guys, talk to a Frankish individual, whatever. Talk to some folks, learn how they do things, figure out where you stand and what you believe. You can only do that through practice and only through actually getting out there and doing. You can read all day long, but it won't substitute for actually doing it. As you go through and you search and you seek, I wish you the best of luck. Hey.
And now for the stinger. If you liked what you saw today, give us a like on the video. Go to the YouTube channel, hit subscribe. Make sure you set your notifications on so you get updates as to when the new videos are coming out. Also hit me up on Facebook at the Facebook group Weaving Words Productions. I check there all the time. Get updates from you guys as to ways that I can improve the channel, things that we can do to help this get even better. So hit me up there. I also post up all the links to the new videos. Make sure that you turn your notifications on there as well. Hit like on all the videos you can so that the algorithms keep putting it in your feed as long as you want to stay up to date. So in the meantime, have a good day.